when you have a loss in your life of a wife or a daughter, that leaves an indelible wound in your heart. And as an actor, one is trained and one can have access to those emotions.
He was the man who redefined James Bond, a Hollywood icon with charm, grace, and timeless style. But behind the silver screen glamour, Pierce Brosnan's life has been marked by devastating loss, unimaginable pain, and struggles that would break even the strongest spirit. At 72, the tragedy of Pierce Brosnan is beyond heartbreaking, and few truly know the depth of what he endured. Pierce Brosnan seemed destined for greatness. From his breakout role in Remington Steele to stepping into the legendary shoes of 007, he captivated audiences worldwide. Women adored him, men admired him, and Hollywood crowned him one of its most bankable stars. But behind the tuxedos and movie posters, Brosnan's journey has been scarred by loss. From the death of his first wife to the heartbreak of losing his daughter, from childhood abandonment to personal battles with grief, his story is not just one of stardom, but of survival. This is the untold, heartbreaking truth of Pierce Brosnan's life. A story of resilience in the face of tragedy, and of a man who carried pain quietly while the world saw only his smile. Before the fame, before Hollywood, before Bond, Pierce Brosnan was just a boy from Ireland, and his childhood was anything but easy. Born in 1953 in County Meath, Ireland, Pierce was only an infant when his father abandoned the family. His mother, struggling to provide, left to work in London as a nurse, leaving Pierce to be raised by relatives. He grew up essentially without parents, a lonely child shuffling between caregivers. Pierce later admitted that the absence of his mother and father left a permanent scar. He felt abandoned, lost, and out of place, carrying that emptiness into adulthood. As a teenager, Brosnan moved to London to reunite with his mother, but the years of distance had left wounds. The sense of never fully belonging would follow him throughout his life. Even as he found success, the pain of that fractured childhood never disappeared. Could this early heartbreak have been the reason Pierce always searched for connection, for love, and for family, even when fate seemed determined to take it away? Despite his difficult beginnings, Pierce Brosnan's life took a turn when he met Cassandra Harris, a striking actress from Australia. The two fell deeply in love, and Cassandra quickly became the anchor Pierce had always longed for. They married in 1980, and Brosnan not only became a husband, but also a father figure to Cassandra's two children from a previous relationship, whom he later adopted as his own. The couple had a son together, completing the family Pierce had dreamed of since childhood. Their love story was powerful. Cassandra encouraged Pierce's career, pushing him to take roles that showcased his talent. She was his biggest supporter, his partner, and his safe haven in an industry that often chews people up. But tragedy was waiting. In the late 1980s, Cassandra was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. For years, Pierce stood by her side, watching helplessly as the woman who had given him everything fought for her life. In 1991, Cassandra passed away at just 43 years old, leaving Pierce devastated. The loss nearly broke him. He described her death as the darkest time of his life, a grief so consuming it was hard to breathe. Suddenly, he was not only heartbroken, but also left to raise 3 children on his own. So how did Pierce Brosnan, a man already scarred by abandonment, survive the loss of the one person who gave him stability? When Cassandra passed away in 1991, Pierce Brosnan's world collapsed. But in the midst of grief, he faced an overwhelming responsibility, raising 3 children alone. He had adopted Cassandra's 2 children, Charlotte and Christopher, and shared a son, Sean, with her. Now, as a single father, he had to balance his growing career with being the sole pillar of his family. Hollywood is not forgiving. Actors are expected to show up with smiles, deliver performances, and maintain their image no matter what storms rage behind the curtain. For Pierce, this dual life became his reality. On one hand, he was the rising star with piercing blue eyes and undeniable charm. On the other, he was a father trying to comfort children who had just lost their mother. Friends recall how Brosnan would rush home after long days on set, determined to be present for his kids. He cooked meals, attended school events, and tried to offer a sense of stability. But he also admitted the loneliness was suffocating. In interviews, he confessed that nights were the hardest. When the house was quiet, the grief would return like a tidal wave. Still, he endured. Perhaps it was his own childhood, marked by absence and longing, that fueled his determination to give his children the love and presence he never had. He once said, "I had to be strong for them. They needed me, and that was my only focus." But even as he rebuilt his life, Hollywood came calling with an opportunity that would change everything. The question was, could Pierce step into the spotlight of one of the world's most iconic roles while still carrying the heavy weight of his personal tragedy? The role of James Bond is every actor's dream, and Pierce Brosnan was destined for it. Originally considered for the part in the 1980s, he was forced to decline when his TV series Remington Steele was unexpectedly renewed. But fate wasn't done with him. In 1995, 4 years after Cassandra's death, Brosnan finally became 007 in GoldenEye. The film was a massive success. Brosnan's Bond was sleek, stylish, and modern, breathing new life into the franchise. For audiences, he was the perfect Bond, blending the suave sophistication of Sean Connery with a vulnerability that made him uniquely human. The world adored him. But behind the tuxedo and martinis, Brosnan was still grieving. Every red carpet premiere, every photo shoot, every glamorous event was shadowed by the absence of the woman who had believed in him the most. Cassandra never lived to see him become Bond, and that fact weighed heavily on him. Colleagues noted that Brosnan carried himself with professionalism, but off-set, he often withdrew. Fame couldn't erase the nights he spent alone, staring at pictures of his late wife, wondering how different life would have been had she survived. Yet Brosnan pushed forward. He went on to star in 4 Bond films: GoldenEye, Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. He cemented his legacy in Hollywood history, but even as he wore the mantle of the world's most confident secret agent, his private life told a different story. So, did the role of James Bond save Pierce Brosnan from his grief? Or did it simply give him a mask to hide behind? For years after Cassandra's death, Pierce Brosnan was adrift. He dedicated himself to raising his children and throwing himself into work, but the emptiness remained. Friends and colleagues often described him as kind and professional, but those closest to him knew he was carrying a wound that would never fully heal. Then, in the mid-1990s, he met journalist and television personality Keely Smith. What started as a chance meeting soon blossomed into a deep and lasting love. For Pierce, Keely was not just a partner. She was a lifeline. She offered warmth, stability, and compassion at a time when he needed it most. Unlike the glitz of Hollywood, Keely provided a safe space. She wasn't dazzled by his fame, nor intimidated by his grief. Instead, she embraced both Pierce and his children, helping to rebuild the sense of family he thought he had lost forever. The two married in 2001 in a ceremony filled with love and hope. Together, they welcomed 2 sons, Dylan and Paris, completing the family Pierce had always dreamed of. Photos of Pierce with Keely over the years show a man transformed, smiling, relaxed, and clearly devoted. Yet even with this newfound joy, the scars of his past never truly disappeared. Brosnan often spoke about how Cassandra would always remain a part of him, and how grief isn't something you move on from. You simply learn to live with it. Keely, understanding this, supported him through the shadows. But life wasn't done testing Pierce Brosnan. Just when it seemed he had found peace again, tragedy returned to his doorstep in the most painful way imaginable. If losing Cassandra had been the darkest chapter of Pierce's life, what came next was almost unbearable. In 2013, Brosnan's daughter Charlotte, the little girl he had adopted and raised as his own, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, the same disease that had taken her mother decades earlier. The cruel twist of fate was almost too much to comprehend. Pierce watched, once again, as someone he loved battled the same relentless illness that had already stolen so much from him. Charlotte fought bravely, but in June 2013, at just 41 years old, she passed away. For Brosnan, it was devastation all over again. Losing Cassandra had left him broken, but losing Charlotte, his child, was a different kind of agony. He described the grief as indescribable, a pain that no parent should ever have to endure. In interviews, Brosnan admitted that watching history repeat itself was like reliving the same nightmare, but this time with even greater intensity. The disease that had shattered his family once had now returned to take another. It was a reminder that some wounds never truly heal, they only deepen. Despite his heartbreak, Brosnan chose to honor Charlotte's memory by continuing to speak publicly about cancer awareness. He lent his voice to campaigns, using his platform to raise awareness about ovarian cancer, hoping to spare other families from experiencing the same fate. Still, those who knew him best said the pain never really left. Even as he smiled for cameras and continued acting, there was always a shadow behind his eyes, the shadow of a father who had buried his daughter. And so we ask, how much tragedy can one man endure before it breaks him completely? For Pierce Brosnan, grief became a lifelong companion. It wasn't something he could escape, but something he had to learn to live with. And over the years, he found one outlet that helped him process the pain: art. Brosnan turned to painting, creating canvases filled with bold colors, abstract shapes, and haunting imagery. To him, painting wasn't about perfection, it was about expression. Each brushstroke was a release of emotion, a way of channeling sadness, love, and longing into something tangible. He once described painting as a sanctuary, a place where he could lose himself, and if only briefly, quiet the storm inside. His works, often auctioned for charity, revealed glimpses of the inner world he kept so carefully guarded. To the public, Pierce Brosnan was James Bond, the confident hero. But on canvas, he was simply a man searching for peace. Beyond painting, Brosnan also chose roles that allowed him to explore deeper emotional territory. While audiences remembered him for Bond, he found personal satisfaction in films where he could portray vulnerability: widowers, fathers, and men struggling with loss. In many ways, these roles mirrored his own experiences. Acting became another form of therapy, a way to live out grief in front of the camera while quietly managing it in his own life. Friends and colleagues often said Brosnan carried himself with grace, but those close to him knew that behind the charm was a man who had been shaped and scarred by tragedy. His ability to keep moving forward, to continue creating and loving despite his losses, became a testament to his resilience. Still, even resilience has its limits. And at 72, Pierce Brosnan carries a lifetime of memories, some joyous, some deeply painful, that continue to shape the man he is today. So the question lingers: has Pierce Brosnan truly found healing? Or is he simply living gracefully with wounds that never fully close? Pierce Brosnan's life reads like a movie script. The abandoned child who rose to international fame, the widower who lost the love of his life, the father who buried his daughter, and the artist who continues to fight through pain with creativity and love. At 72, his tragedies are heartbreaking, but his resilience is inspiring. He has shown the world that even in the face of unbearable loss, life can still hold beauty, meaning, and purpose. Through his art, his films, and his family, Pierce Brosnan has crafted a legacy not just of glamour, but of strength. His story is a reminder that behind every celebrity smile lies a human being, fragile, flawed, and fighting battles we may never see. Brosnan's tragedies are beyond heartbreaking, but his journey proves that even the deepest scars can be carried with dignity. Now we turn to you. What do you think Pierce Brosnan's story teaches us about grief, resilience, and the human spirit? Let us know in the comments below. And if you were moved by this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more untold stories of the stars you thought you knew. Because sometimes the greatest performances aren't on screen. They're in the way people survive the tragedies life throws at them.